must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is.
It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, "He is our son and he is our thief."
If you are deviant
Yes.
and I call you leader,
Yes.
probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth
Yeah.
in the security
Yes.
and the development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X's and Y's, this and that. They don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers,
Yes.
do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa.
The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa.
Fellow Africans, since 1957, when Ghana gained independence, there has been quite a lot of political, social, economic indicators on the African continent that show that Africa has progressed from pre-independence Africa to post-independence Africa.
Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. From now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
66 years down the road, Africa finds itself with the first country, Ghana, having gained independence. We find ourselves still locked up, controlled, manipulated, instructed, logistically supplied, equipped by foreign powers that dictate our agenda. Africa is endowed with plenty of minerals, resources, good weather. The climate is so favorable for the growth of food enough to sustain us. But we find ourselves in countries where hunger is killing people. Hunger is killing people because most of the people have taken to arms to fight wars, conflicts. Starvation has taken the place of development. In most African countries like Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Nigeria, in Biafra, and north of Nigeria there is Boko Haram, Somalia in the Horn of East Africa. We have taken to conflict instead of development. Development was the key indicator. When Kwame Nkrumah made the first speech that seek ye African political unity, economic development will come automatically. He was right. The events happening in Libya today vindicates Nkrumah, vindicates Nyerere, Sekou Toure, and Nasser, the founding fathers of our Pan-Africanism. The events happening in Central African Republic, in Congo today, as the war of rebels ranges on between the rebel and the rebels and the government and the government, and the rebels vindicates the founding fathers of this revolution. Our independence, therefore, was only on paper. Our independence, therefore, was only in symbols. Our independence also was in signs. Our independence also was in boundaries. That we received our flags, but we never received full independence as by the word independence. Most of the 3/4 of African countries, French-speaking countries, have their budgets being done in Paris. Is that independence? The Paris government or the French government does its budgets based on how much they will get from African countries. Is that independence? Is this the Africa that you want? Is it the Africa that we must look at? Is it the Africa that we shall leave for the future generation? If the answer to you is yes, then so be it. But if the answer is no, you agree with me that this is not the Africa we want to leave for the future generation. Our generations and the future generation need to find a legacy. What is the legacy that Africa and African Union will leave for the future generation? The wars ranging in Libya, in South Sudan, in Khartoum, in Mogadishu, in DRC Congo, in Amazonia, in Cameroon, Boko Haram, Mali, in Mauritania, the uprisings in Algeria, all point to one thing, that yes, we are not yet independent. We are still controlled by external forces. Thank you.
All right, a very good morning to you, and thank you again for joining us here on another different show. And this time we are looking at corruption and the fight against corruption in Kenya. And as we know, Kenya's competitiveness is held back by high corruption levels, and that penetrate every sector of the economy. Our weak judicial system and frequent demands for bribes by public officials lead to increased business costs for foreign investors. And Kenya's much publicized war on corruption has, over the years, taken a backlash. Sometimes what started with a firm resolve of ridding the country of corrupt elements has instead received different reviews. But we've seen an increase in prosecution of cases that are corruption related. As you've seen, the EACC, the DPP issue the reports they usually do. So that will form a basis of our conversation this morning. But before we even get into that, there's a story I promised we will look at during this session on the Star newspaper, page 7. Before I do that, I'm joined this morning. Samuel Tawish, I see you eating. Good morning.
Good morning, Miriam. Actually, it was not that I was eating. I was just having a taste of the mabuyu from the coastal region, Mombasa to be specific.
Yes, indeed. I know we bought a few from there. I enjoyed mine. I'll probably enjoy mine also, some of them, after this show. Very interesting.
Great.
Good morning, and nice to have you again on this show.
My pleasure, Miriam, to be part of this program this morning.
All right, thank you so much. And I think we're also joined by another person. They were added when I was busy looking at what Tawish is eating. All right, not now. Very well. So the story on page 7 on the Star newspaper: new bill compels governors to make all tenders public. Dishing out county tenders to cronies could soon end if a Senate bill that compels governors to publicize all tenders is enacted. The County Oversight and Accountability Bill 2021 seeks to enhance oversight, promote accountability and transparency, and fight graft in the counties through involvement of the people. It compels governors through their finance executives to publish annual reports on all procurements for services of works undertaken by the county governments. The officers shall prepare an annual report on the status of public finances in the respective counties. The bill reads in part, it states that the report shall then be published and publicized by the senator. To ensure it reaches as many residents as possible, the senator shall carry out the required evaluation and may prepare for circulation within the county a report on the public finances of the county and the participation of residents in the decision-making process with respect to the public finances in the county, it says. So I see they are trying to strengthen the role of the Senate, which is oversight in the counties, as we've been the Senate in Kenya has been criticized, and there seems to be sleeping on their job in terms of oversight. So I see this bill seems to strengthen our Senate's position as the oversight body in the counties. And this bill, as I have read there, will make all tenders public. Is this the kind of bill that is likely to sail through, Samuel Sawish?
Miriam, I highly doubt that the senators or the lawmakers are very keen on enacting laws that will otherwise help in streamlining the procurement processes, especially at the county level. Because again, you and I, Miriam, really understand that most of these politicians, the members of our National Assembly and Senate, really have ambitions even to become the next governors in the coming 2022 general election and beyond. And therefore, it will be self-defeating to them to be part of course, a process that is otherwise going to make it tight for the governors really to steal from the public coffers. Because again, you will just hear that, but it is going to be far from action for them to do it. Because why has it taken this long? Ever since we had devolution in the first place, way beyond in 2013, up to now, how many years down the line? Almost 7 or 8. But now we've not had these senators come out really to do much of such kind of legislations that are otherwise going to help streamline such kind of essential processes at the county governments. Miriam, we all appreciate that, of course, with the coming in of devolution, a new concept altogether, there were a lot of numerous teething problems, especially when it came to implementation of devolution at the county level. And that is why you saw in the first term of devolution, that is in 2013 towards 2017, a lot of public money was really stolen because, again, there was a lot of loopholes at the county government that otherwise made it possible or easy for the governors and their cronies and maybe those working in the procurement departments really to steal from the public. But I think it's a good gesture if they're going to make sure that this legislation is going to come to fruition. Then I think it is going to make sure that the people and the people at the grassroots, especially those at the county level, are going to benefit from this particular process and benefit from the developmental projects that are otherwise being done by the county governments on the ground. Mm-hmm. Because without the same, Miriam, it creates a leeway and a loophole for governors and those other, of course, cronies to steal from the public coffers, Miriam.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you so much. So this bill will compel governors through their finance executives to publish annual reports on all procurements for services or works undertaken by the county governments. And we've seen the auditor report every time, the office has done, the Auditor General in the country. Every time report has been done and audit has been done in the counties, we see, a lot of mismanagement and loss of public funds. So this should be a good bill, at least for the interest of the people. But I don't know if it will see a day, a light of day, if at all. Okay, very well. So go ahead.
Yes, that is why I emphasize on that point that the problem we are having is a conflict of interest. Conflict of interest in the sense that the people who we expect to legislate these laws, to have these laws put into place, are the same people who have interest really to contest for this position, and they feel like they are going to make laws that is going to make it difficult even for themselves. So that is why they will not be very keen on doing this. It could just be but a public stint that they are trying to carry out, but essentially we may not see the fruition of this particular legislation actually take effect, because again that is the most difficult part of it. You have lawmakers who appear like or feel like they also need to get that particular opportunity to go and of course steal from the public coffers. You remember the first time, and I think it is only the second term of devolution, that we have not seen so much of infighting between governors and senators, simply because of these because of the control of funds at the county governments. And therefore, they will be hesitant or reluctant, really, Miriam, to be part of that process that is going to streamline and make it stiffer or difficult and seal all those loopholes that make it easy for them to steal from the public coffers, Miriam, I submit.
Okay, thank you so much, Samuel Tawish. And by the way, Samuel Tawish is a journalist here in Nairobi. We are joined by another journalist, Jevan Karanja. Jevan, if you can hear me, good morning. All right, so Jevan keeps showing up and disappearing. I don't know what is the problem with his connection today, but once he's able to stabilize and to actually join us, then we will continue to have him. All right, that's it. So let's just turn our attention to other stories. Of course, we're looking at corruption in Kenya, and our topic this morning is how to cure the curse of corruption in Kenya. So whatever is being proposed there is one of the ways to ensure accountability and transparency in the counties. But there has been, we've seen a tug of war between governors and senators. And we've seen, as we were doing our morning show, we saw the 22 outgoing governors not wanting to endorse their deputy governors there. And there has been cases where, especially during, the committee that oversight, in Parliament that goes through and calls these governors and, takes them through a questioning and all that, the senators, the committee, the finance committee in the Senate. And a lot of times when these governors appear in that committee, there has been some allegations that the senators are witch hunting, against their perceived governors. So will this be a form of a witch hunt? Do you think the governors will take it kindly? It shouldn't be viewed from that perspective, Miriam, that it's more of a witch hunt, because again, the current governors are not going to be there for eternity. I think they're just there for a season, and they'll have to exit and pave way for the other incoming governors. So essentially, I think when we are making legislations, we are making laws, it should not be out of convenience, but it's these laws and legislations that we are making should be for posterity purposes. It does not matter. It could be you who will be there tomorrow. It could be another person altogether. So we need to make laws that is not about targeting a particular individual or targeting the current governors for that matter. It should be laws for posterity. And I think that is where the attention should be drawn to. That even as the senators are drafting these particular legislations, remember they are the people who further devolution, who are supposed to make sure that devolution really is working. And that is why really taxpayers are paying them. And they are supposed to make sure that the county government's operations do not stall altogether. They are supposed to spearhead for resource allocations from the national government to the county government. So it is also important for them, in as much as they advocate for those resources to go to the county governments, that they make sure that the same resources are utilized, Miriam. There's not more of misappropriation that we have witnessed in the past with so many of the county governments. And I think these are steps in the right direction, as long as it's not about targeting an individual or targeting the current regime of the governors. Because after all, like I've said, Miriam, the current leadership, the current governors, including even the president himself, they will not be here for eternity. They'll have to pave way for the next generation, and therefore these laws are supposed to be meant for posterity. And I hope that is the motive that is driving this particular legislation by the Senate, Miriam. All right, thank you so much. And there is a bill in Parliament since last year on that will aid in the fight against corruption, and it has a couple of proposals, and some of these are also contained in the PBI amendment bill of Constitution Amendment Bill of 2020, and some of the proposals of that bill in Parliament right now that I think they've refused to debate on and pass it on. EACC will get new powers to seek expert orders from the High Court bearing appointment appointed state officers under investigation or who have been charged with corruption or an offense of economic crime from accessing a public office or exercising specific duties. So they're saying if you've been mentioned or you are actively being investigated, you'll be barred from going to your office and you'll not be carrying out a certain, specified powers until your case is heard. We see, now that being implemented by our courts. We've seen some orders being given, people being barred from accessing office, and sometimes, we've seen how it ended with the governor of Kiambu, former governor of Kiambu, and also former governor of Nairobi. But is this enough in deterring corruption cases or in the fight, in the totality of it?
Well, Miriam, I think generally the point here is what kind of measures as a country can we have in place to make sure that we create that deterrence in as far as corruption is concerned. I'd not really. It is just part of it, but I do not think it is enough. Really to fight and deter people from getting involved in corrupt activities in this country. And unfortunately, Miriam, also, I think we are at the mercy of the lawmakers who are supposed to be making these changes. They are supposed to be making these amendments of course, in Parliament. They are the people who are making these laws for us. And therefore, when you have people who have interest or who are conflicted in such a very critical matter, it becomes very difficult for them really to make laws that are going to sink their political careers in the future. Take, for example, the BBI and the proposals contained therein in as far as the fight against corruption is concerned. Are you surprised that a huge chunk of lawmakers today or politicians, those in office and even those who are aspiring for various positions today, are not very keen in supporting BBI? Not because it's bad, not because it does not promote inclusivity, not because it does not promote unity and fighting ethnicity and corruption and such kind of thing. It is because there are certain aspects of the BBI proposals that, if passed, is going to make it almost impossible for someone even to contest for a particular office, let alone them being, hauled out of office. So I think generally that is the motive behind some of the people who are coming out really to come and fight BBI and make sure that it cannot pass. You've seen the kind of fight in public forums. They have taken the same now in our judiciary, and it's very unfortunate that we have had a judiciary being hijacked really to solve such a very critical process that would have otherwise given us solutions to the most of problems this country has been facing, especially on the corruption front, Miriam. So it is only my hope, Miriam, that if we can have this BBI really passed in the run-up to 2022 general election or thereafter, even if you are going to delay election, for the sake of making sure that BBI has been passed, we are going to sieve and make sure we have only filtered, and the residue really, Miriam, can remain behind, so that we do not have every Tom, Dick, and Harry coming on board in the name of politicians actually to contest for various positions. You saw we tried to gamble here in Nairobi with Mike Sonko. You saw what happened. Mm-hmm. We tried to gamble the same in Kiambu, Waititu living in Bakasi altogether to go back to Kiambu. And out of just that excitement, the people of Kiambu voted for him to become their governor. What has happened in that particular county? I mean, Waititu has really looted a lot of money in that county. We've seen so many other leaders. The list is actually endless. So what does it tell us essentially, Miriam? That I think with the passage of BBI, if BBI is really going to be allowed to proceed to the end in terms of a referendum, and the same is going to be anchored in our law, then we are going to have a one streamlined process in receiving politicians and make sure that we only but get competent men and ladies of integrity, people who are suitable to serve us in those very critical positions, Miriam. Because, leadership is also about more of policy, more of being entrusted with resources of the public, so that you can actually use the same for the benefit of the people who elected you. But if you have corrupt individuals who are going to lead these institutions, even trying to sabotage and making difficult in terms of policy, mm-hmm. and these resources trickling down to the ordinary mwananchi becomes but just a nightmare, Miriam.
All right. Thank you so much. And now we've seen a body like EACC, which are a very important body when it comes to the fight against corruption. And sometimes, Kenyans have branded it a toothless dog. It's just barks, but it cannot bite. So how would you propose, as a Kenyan, as Samuel Tawish, to empower such a body in the sense that, it's given more powers when it comes to how it handles these corruption matters?
Miriam, I think the problem we have is that we have what normally Dr. Matsanga refers as structural challenges that we have as a country. because again, you have so many institutions almost doing the same job, duplication of jobs. And that is why instead of these people concentrating on the job that they have been appointed to do, they concentrate on infighting and supremacy and really to want to tell which organ is more superior than the other. You have it's like a construction site where you're building a house. If you cannot have a right person doing the foundation and constructing a whole house, it does not matter the kind of roofing and finishing you're going to have, Miriam, that house will come down. And so is the same case, for example, with corruption cases in the country. If you do not have the right people carrying out investigation in terms of the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, if you do not have the right people at the office of the DPP to confer charges, if you do not have the right individuals really at the court, the justice system, Miriam, it is almost a futile endeavor to bring these people to court, because after all, maybe they will buy their justice or they will buy their freedom out. So I think essentially we need what I will call collegiality. We need what we call synergy in as far as all the organs that really are tasked with the mandate of fighting corruption are concerned. And if it's about the question of empowering, for example, Miriam, what are the kind of suggestions that the EACC feels maybe have to be implemented? What are the kind of suggestions that they're putting forth that maybe the country through parliament or even the presidency can try to fix, so that they are empowered, so that they cannot have an excuse as to why they cannot actually execute their job as it should, Miriam. So I think the question here and the point here, Miriam, is more of synergy. The office of the DCI, the office of the DPP, the EAC, the judiciary, and also the ordinary members of public. We all need to work in tandem to make sure that we win the war against corruption. Because again, when one organ really fails, it's like a chain link, Miriam. When one organ fails, it becomes very difficult for the other organ really to succeed. So it is all an aspect of them working together in a well-concerted effort to achieve one objective goal of fighting and making sure that we eradicate corruption completely in our country.
Okay, thank you so much. And of course, in that new proposed bill, there is a section there that has to do with foreign bank accounts. And for years, state and public officers have been accused of operating offshore accounts and hiding their wealth abroad in tax havens. The proposed law now makes it a crime for such officers to operate foreign bank accounts without the approval of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. More so, state officers who operate such accounts will be required to submit annual statements to UACC. A failure to submit the accounts will attract a jail term of 5 years or a fine not exceeding 5 million Kenya shillings or both. Also, state officers who fail to sign the Leadership and Integrity Code risk losing their positions. The bill proposes that any person can apply to the High Court to invalidate the assumption of office of a person who fails to sign the code. I understand why they will not even pass this bill. When you look at the proposals in that bill, will EACC be able to actually will find the people who are being targeted, who have these offshore accounts, and especially the civil servants? Do you think they will have the integrity to come and declare according to what this new bill will require of them?
I do not understand really why we are allowing the politicians really to have a field day. Because today, if you are going to look for a job, Miriam, you understand this, and most of maybe our viewers understand. If you're going to look for a job, there's a prerequisite, like there are things that you're supposed to provide as a mandatory, as a necessity for you to get a job. Say, for example, maybe your qualification papers. Say, for example, the clearance from the Directorate of Criminal Investigation. There's also that aspect today of, I think, is it the HELB and so many of other organizations. So how can it be possible that in the first place we are having politicians who get elected without really filling that form of the wealth declaration form? How do we even allow that to happen? I think we should begin from there. Before even we think of haunting these people from office, they should not even contest in the first place because they have not met the requisite qualification. I think it should be as basic as that. When we do that, then we'll be energizing the fight against corruption, Miriam. And second thing, I suppose, Miriam, also, because we are talking about what we can do, or what a nation like Kenya can do to deter, of course, corruption. There's also an aspect of us celebrating and treating people who are involved in corruption as though they are heroes or heroines in this country, Miriam. Instead of us really rebuking and reprimanding these individuals, the Kenyans are doing the opposite. You are seeing how they are actually cherishing those individuals really who are caught in corruption or who are involved in corrupt activities, Miriam. A second thing I also support, Miriam, is that the kind of jail terms are also maybe so lenient. Or the fines that we give to these individuals. For example, if someone has been convicted of having stolen 1 billion Kenya shillings, why would we give them maybe 100 million just to get out of jail, Miriam, as a bail condition? I think those are the things we need to streamline, making sure that if you have stolen, say, 1 billion, it means then you must have stolen even some more other billions before this was noticed. So you have to be given, say, 2 times what you have been convicted of. In that way, we'll be making it a very serious deterrent as a measure for people not to be engaged in corruption. But if we continue to treat this vice as normal, then it will continually treat us abnormally, and we don't have really to complain because it is a dose of our own making, Miriam.
Okay. And the same bill, further proposes that the High Court may invalidate the assumption to office of any state officer who doesn't sign the Leadership and Integrity Act. And for instance, also the EACC would now be required to thoroughly scrutinize contents of self-declaration forms of politicians running for office. So I think you'll have to declare your wealth and all that. That is according to the proposal in that bill. And anybody who goes to challenge your assumption to office from, when it comes to integrity and leadership, then, the High Court can annul your assumption of office. Will this be a deterrent enough? Should this bill ever see the day of light?
Really, Miriam, I reject to accept that will be a deterrent because in my own thinking, I suppose, this individual should not even get to office in the first place. I assume maybe what they are talking about are the people who are currently serving in those particular offices, because unfortunately, maybe I could only but be referring to elected politicians, but maybe this bill targets not only politicians, but it cuts across in as far as maybe holding public office, other elective and appointive offices. So generally, I think we need to make it a prerequisite. We need to make it like if you're getting into office for the first time, you need to make a clear offer declaration of your wealth status, Miriam, before even you get into that office. Because again, it's an embarrassment, it's a humiliation for you once to get into an office and again to be haunted. Why don't we just make it difficult for them to get into that office in the first place? Because again, the processes of getting these individuals to the office are sometimes cumbersome, they are tedious, are processes that take long time. There are processes that sometimes even involve a lot of public resources. Take, for example, the vetting and subsequent appointment of a Chief Justice, for example. It's a very elaborate process that involves so much of resources to do all those vetting processes, interviews taken to parliaments, subjected to approval and then appointment by the president, only for someone else to come back again and say maybe CJ Martha Koome was just appointed the other day, did not fill the wealth declaration form. How did it happen? Because why did we have this all, oversights? Why didn't we actually have a keen eye when we are doing the vetting process? So I think it has to be a prerequisite and not necessarily a follow-up after somebody has already assumed office. I want to imagine that they are talking about the individuals who already hold office as we speak now.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, we know corruption undermines human development and it severely impacts and derails a country's progress. How is this true in the Kenyan scenario?
It has, Miriam, to a large extent. You've seen, for example, so many of the developmental projects, especially of President Uhuru Kenyatta, have stalled. You cannot quite name all of them, but if you are just to cite examples, say, for example, Aurora and Kimorer Dam, say, for example, the NYS scandal that we had last time, say, for example, the KEMSA scandal that these scandals are so many, Miriam, you cannot actually end the list. But what I'm trying to say is that it compromises service delivery for the mwananchi, because essentially the reason why government comes to you for revenue or taxes is because they can use the same really to provide good quality services to the ordinary mwananchi. So if you have monies or resources that are otherwise meant for developmental projects that are meant to uplift the livelihoods of the people of Kenya, actually going into the pockets of a few, what essentially are you trying to talk about? I mean, corruption is eating almost to the soul of this nation, Miriam. It has compromised service delivery. You go to the hospital today, there are not enough infrastructure, Miriam. There is no medicine. I mean, maybe doctors and nurses have not been paid. How do you expect as a Kenyan, a patient of meager pay or no pay at all really to go and access service from a government facilities when there are no drugs, Miriam. So I think that is just but an example. You go to public schools, you do not get the best of infrastructure, you do not get maybe books for the kids at school. How do you expect these kids really to excel in their education? Because someone maybe at the Ministry of Education has swindled the money that was otherwise meant to provide this infrastructure, to put up this infrastructure and provide the basic needs that are supposed to actually to be used by the kids who are going to school, Miriam. So it is something that really cuts the deep soul of a nation. And if we cannot deal with corruption at this monster, Miriam, even as we head into 2022 general election, Miriam, the conversation should not really be about who becomes president, who does not become president. That is why we emphasize that we want people of integrity. We want people who are competent, people who have proved not to be corrupt, Miriam, or at least people who are very keen on fighting corruption. But if you have people who are going to have a field day as presidents in this republic, then you'll have yourselves to blame. This is the time for Kenyans really to vet critically people who are contesting for presidency and other various leadership positions come 2022, Miriam, because in itself, it means a lot in as far as the service you're going to get from these leaders are concerned.
Okay, thank you, Samuel Tawish. Now, we know corruption is a very crucial factor that international investors even look when they're seeking for investment opportunities in different countries across the world. Do you think perhaps because of our record there, maybe I don't know if I can find our corruption index. We know, we're not saying the government is not doing enough, but I think those institutions, they're doing all they can, but I think Kenyans are demanding for more. Let me just put it that way. So, according to last year's corruption index, perception index, Kenya obtained a score of 28 out of 100 in the Global Corruption Perceptions Index released by Transparency International, a score which is below the global average score of 43 and the sub-Saharan average score of 32. And I'll skip that and come to the regional outlook. In the East African region, Rwanda is ranked highest, garnering 53 points, followed by Tanzania with 37, Kenya and Uganda with score 28. That was last year's perception index. And Burundi has 19 and South Sudan has 12. So they are looking at the East African community there. So if a foreign investor is coming to invest, looking for an investment opportunity, they will look at such information and such statistics. So do you think this has worked against our attracting investment in this country? And what can be done about it?
In fact, Miriam, it is just unfortunate that we are using a euphemism to define what we are. It is not even. It shouldn't even be a perception of corruption index. It should be the reality, because that is what we are as a country, as a people. I mean, that is how our rating is. We are people who are not very keen on making sure that we fight this vice called corruption, and to a large extent, it has compromised so much of what would have otherwise helped this country to grow and develop. Let me take an example of one of the world's billionaires or rich individuals in the name of Aliko Dangote from Nigeria. There was a time he came into Kenya some years back. Really, he wanted to put up a company. Was it a cement company, if I'm not very wrong, in some part of the lower eastern region in Ukambani, if I'm not very wrong. He couldn't do the same because, again, the kind of request for kickbacks from those who are involved in as far as this procurement and all these processes, licenses are concerned, made it difficult for Aliko Dangote to put up that company in that part of the country, or to put up that company in Kenya. So he actually had to go to Tanzania, and he has done that. So what does it mean for us? One, we have lost up that opportunity in terms of this company being set up. We have lost revenue because, again, with the putting up of that company, so many people would have got skilled and non-skilled labor would have gotten job opportunities. I mean, we would have gotten also revenue to the government, because when people are working, they can easily also pay taxes, and in itself also makes government to run its affairs smoothly. And also the company itself will be paying revenue to the government. So that is just one example, Miriam. What does it tell you? That corruption in itself really is a very big monster that is compromising service delivery and compromising development and growth of any nation, and especially in Africa region. I think these are some of the things that leadership needs to confront and try to fight. But President Uhuru Kenyatta, ever since he came into office, Miriam, I will contend that the president has tried his level best to fight corruption. Some of us were in doubt when he was coming into power for the first time. I remember 2013 to 2017, there was a lot of mayhem. in as far as corruption is concerned. President Kenyatta even at some point came out and asked Kenyan what is it that he could do when we had given him the instruments of power to ensure that he safeguards the resources of this particular republic for the interest of the members of the public. But there's a rejuvenated spirit that we have witnessed from President Uhuru Kenyatta from 2017 to date. I mean, he's been very committed. He's given that political impetus and goodwill to fight this vice called corruption. And that is why, even at some point, he said he was willing to lose friends, to lose brother and sister. And actually, there's a big testament to that effect that really he has lost friends, he's lost brothers and sisters in as far as his resolute stand in the fight against corruption is concerned today. People who are actually, friends of President Uhuru Kenyatta, people who used to romance with him, but today they do not read from the same script because President Uhuru Kenyatta has taken a very big stand in as far as the fight against corruption. And I think that is what we need in as far as leadership is concerned. Sometimes you need to take those bold and courageous decisions, even if you're going to remain alone, as long as it's for the public good. And I think President Uhuru Kenyatta, history will judge him best because he's done his best to make sure that it safeguards the resources of the members of the public, Miriam.
All right, thank you so much. And of course, all is not lost, as we've seen other agencies tasked with this very important fight. Last year gave us a report, and I'm waiting for this year's report from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. But last year's report, let me just bring us up to date. And according to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, they have averted a loss of approximately 20.4 billion Kenya shillings through proactive investigations and disruption of corruption network since 2014. And according to the Status of Fight Against Corruption report released by CEO Talib Mubarak last year, in 2014, the Commission saved 1.6 billion. In 2016, 2.6 billion. In 2016, 6.2 billion. 2017, 4.7 billion. And 2018, 14.5 billion. Mubarak spoke last year, of course, in Kisumu there. So he's saying since 2014, assets that have been recovered, that in terms of cash, movable and immovable, worth 13.2 billion Kenya shillings have been recovered or surrendered to the Commission. And I think the last time we were having this conversation, the assets and recovery, we're wondering, once they've recovered these assets, a lot of these things that have been stolen from Kenyans, where do they channel these recoveries to? The monies, the houses. What does that do? How does it serve Kenyans after the recoveries? I don't know if you have any idea what happens after they recover these things.
Well, Miriam, I think these monies or resources are supposed to go back to the exchequer, rather to the taxman, so that the same can be utilized. And as far as budgetary is concerned, many times I suppose that is where these monies and resources are supposed to end. I'm not very sure really if it goes there, because that is why it should get in the first place, because it's not monies or resources that you will take to the president and say this is what we have recovered. And therefore there will not be any accountability for that purpose. Miriam, I think in itself also, those are some of the things we need to emphasize, that the recovery commission should always be coming out and informing Kenyans, because the lack of this transparency, the lack of sensitization sometimes even makes Kenyans maybe believe there's nothing much in as far as fight against corruption is concerned. We not only want to see people being taken to court, we not only want to see people actually serving jail term, we also want to see what has been recovered and what that recovery, what has it helped in as far as changing the lives of the people, in as far as maybe putting the same resources to do other developmental projects in this country as concerned, Miriam. So I think that is also another thing we really need to be addressing, and including also trying to see how we can protect witnesses, Miriam, or the whistleblowers for this matter. Because again, sometimes Kenyans fear to even report corruption cases. They feel like maybe their lives will be at risk, or maybe they will be killed, or maybe sometimes you could even you end up yourself in jail, because that is what the nature of our politics, the nature of our security is. You go to report a matter to the police, and then you find yourself actually end up being jailed. Even if you're walking along the road and you find somebody has been killed, and you go and report. Sometimes people even just run away because they fear I may be held accountable. I may be asked so many questions. I may, after all, be put behind bars simply for going to report this. So sometimes Kenyans are hesitant to do this because they feel they are not as much protected as it should. So these are some of the things really we need to do in as far as making sure that we empower the fight against corruption in our country.
Thank you so much even for raising that question on whistleblowers. You saw how that guy from the Masai Mara, a very recent case, the one who helped uncover the corruption at the Masai Mara University, and he suffered. He lost his job. So there should be some protection when it comes to the people who bring out this very important information. And there's something that you mentioned that perhaps, this money cannot be taken to president's doorstep. Maybe it should, so that we know those projects he was going to commission huko Ukambani, apeleke huko itengeneze barabara. We know this was built from corruption money that was recovered. Maybe there should be something like that, something that will empower Kenyans and will improve the life of Kenyans, because we need to know. We just know these things are recovered, but there's no telling where they're being taken. Or maybe we'll find out from the ESCC. All right, thank you so much, Tawish. That is what we had time for right now. That was Samuel Tawish, a journalist from Nairobi and also a correspondent of Punchline Africa Television. Thank you so much for watching. I see a lot of Biafran, a lot of international watchers watching right now, and a lot of Biafrans and of course other watchers from across the world. I will be back here at 3 p.m. East African time, and then I will be ready now to listen to what you have to say. All right, I'll be ready for you here at 3 p.m. So it will be a pleasure if you join me then. My name is Miriam Mugutu. Thank you so much for your time right now. Bye-bye for now.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.